Hey everybody, welcome to the Madison lineup building for week 5 of the NFL season over on DraftKings, going over our cash game and GPP strategy. And this is going to be quite the interesting slate. I think there's a lot of moving parts right now, and this could look totally different by the time Sunday morning rolls around, because it feels like as of right now, half the league is questionable on a lot of important players which can make or break cash game lineups this weekend. Plus, there's just a lot of good plays in similar price ranges, so we'll have some tough decisions to be made, but I'm definitely looking forward to breaking this one down. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. If you want to get access to all the extra content, spreadsheets, ownership projections, optimizers, Discord community, all that fun stuff, I do cover other sports as well. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're signing up on PrizePicks, you get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100, so it's free money. Why not use it to your advantage? When you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that's it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. I don't think it needs to be said, but if it does, do not just copy and paste this lineup into all your contests. It's not a guarantee that I actually use these by the time game time starts, because there's a lot of things that are going to change throughout the day. And I don't want you guys just thinking this is what I'm 100% rolling with, so you got to be able to make your own decisions. I'm just showing you guys a cash game process I go through each and every single week. You can apply it to your own players and make your own decisions and lineups. And as always with cash games, I want to start with the running back position because they're the most important players in our lineup. Those are the guys that are going to touch the ball the most, and I want to make sure they're the ones I want. Wide receiver 3, tight end, flex, quarterbacks sometimes. I can just fill them in at the end because they're all kind of similar, but running backs, I want the guys that I want because they are very important when it comes to cash games because volume is king. So we'll slide right over to the RB position, and we're just going to plug in the guy that's the most expensive. It's Derrick Henry, $9,000. The other spend-up running backs are very questionable. Christian McCaffrey, who I thought was going to play, he is now doubtful, so you can pretty much assume he is out because doubtful pretty much always means out at this point. And Dalvin Cook is very questionable. It looks like he's trending towards playing, but that's a complete wait-or-see situation there. I loved him early in the week. I mean, facing Detroit, 10-point favorite, but if he's this questionable heading into the game, I just feel like that's probably a cross-off, especially in cash games. I do want to mention, if he is out, Alexander Madison becomes the best RB play in the entire slate, point per dollar wise. I mean, last time Dalvin Cook was out, he had 26 carries, 112 yards, had 8 targets, 6 catches for 60 yards, 26 fantasy points, and that's without even getting a touchdown. So Dalvin Cook is out. Just know that Alexander Madison is my favorite running back on the slate, and he would be my highest owned running back as well. But as of right now, we do not have the information, so it's hard for me to know what to do with that as of right now. But we're just going to plug in King Henry, $9,000. He's a favorite on the road versus Jacksonville. It feels like every single time he plays Jacksonville, he absolutely crushes them for like 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Every single game so far this season, besides week 1 when they were getting killed by Arizona, he has been fantastic. 50, 22, 28. The volume is there each and every single week. No one in football is getting the kind of volume that Derrick Henry gets, and you can realistically project for him to get over 30 total touches each and every single week. So I'll take the volume all day, and it's actually very easy to fit him in this weekend because pricing is pretty soft overall. It looks like we can spend down a quarterback this weekend with either Trey Lance or Daniel Jones, so should not be hard at all to get Derrick Henry in your lineup. And as of right now, I'm projecting him to be the highest owned player on the slate. Dalvin Cook is out. I imagine that will be Alexander Madison, but as of right now, do not know that. So we're going to plug in King Henry, and his volume is also being used in the passing game this season, which is a nice little floor boost for the man. So since we have Derrick Henry in our lineup, and he is very expensive, and I do like a spin-up wide receiver this weekend, we're probably going to have to try to find a cheaper running back. And one that I'm projecting for pretty high ownership this weekend. He's currently my second highest projected running back in terms of ownership. And obviously that can change if Alexander Madison happens to be the starting running back this week. But it's going to be Leonard Fournette here at only $5,200 facing off versus a very weak Miami run defense that is getting killed on the ground so far. And while Giovanni Bernard is questionable for this game, it looks like he's trending towards playing, so I don't think we're going to see Leonard Fournette get around 90% of the snaps like he saw last week. But he's still going to be the RB1 on this team. He's involved in the passing game, 7, 4, 3, and 5 targets for the first 4 weeks. He had 20 rushing attempts for nearly 100 rushing yards last weekend, 16.9 fantasy points, and he's yet to score a touchdown. I think there's room to grow because I think at some point the touchdowns are going to come. The Buccaneers are 10-point favorites here, and like I said, pretty sharp and soft matchup here versus the Miami Dolphins. So $5,200. I'll just take the chalky pairing as of right now of Derrick Henry and Leonard Fournette because I'm a sucker for some cheap volume, and Fournette's going to offer us just that. So at this point, we can either start knocking out our quarterback spot, or we could just kind of power through and get our wide receivers out of the way, which I think we'll go that route. So lots of good wide receivers in this slate. Love Devontae Adams, love Justin Jefferson. I think Adams is your cash game guy. Justin Jefferson is your tournament guy. DJ Moore's playable. They did get a big price hike, but Philly just got killed by Tyreek Hill last week. Deebo Samuel, if you're using Trey Lance, I think is an excellent option versus Arizona. Their pass defense has been pretty tough so far, and they kind of stopped the Rams last week, but I still think you can pass on that team and their defense. I don't think is going to be that great once the season's all said and done, but so far they've been easier to run on than pass. So, I mean, I think Trey Lance's profiles very well versus Arizona this weekend. Moving down the list, A.J. Brown with no Julio Jones versus Jacksonville is definitely a good spot, only $6,500. Keenan Allen, just because he gets targets and he's cheap at $6,500, although I hate the matchup versus Cleveland. Chris Godwin makes sense, although I'm kind of more of a fan of the rushing attack for the Buccaneers on the slate. They already have Fournette. I'll probably bypass Chris Godwin. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to be extremely chalky, him and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is questionable, which I think is just going to shift more ownership to CeeDee Lamb because no one likes playing the guy that's questionable. So CeeDee Lamb, I imagine, is going to have high ownership. Amari Cooper should as well, assuming he is going to be completely good to go. Kenny Golladay with no Darius Slay and Sterling Shepard, $5,900. He bumped up in my projections yesterday. Jacoby Myers, just strictly for volume, and he's facing Houston. But the list goes on. There's a lot of good wide receiver plays on this slate. But Devontae Adams, he's going to be the first guy I plug in. He's second in the league in target share, only behind Brandon Cooks this year. 11, 18, 9, 7 targets. Hasn't exactly been amazing to the Devontae Adams standards, but he's still been solid. I know he had 10 and 12 points, but he's also had 34 and 23. Facing Cincy, this game does feature a 50-point over-under, only a 3-point spread last time I looked, so it should be pretty back and forth. Hopefully a close game, and I can definitely see Devontae Adams tearing up this secondary. So at $8,200, plug him in just seems a bit too cheap, in my opinion. And you're getting two of some of the best players in football, especially volume-wise at their positions. Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry, I feel pretty good about that. It's actually quite easy to attain this weekend over on DK. And before we fill out our wide receiver 2, I think we should probably just plug in our quarterback so we know what kind of salary we have to work with. And there's several good quarterback plays in this slate. Although for cash games, I think it comes down to 3 players for me. It's either going to be Dak Prescott at $6,900, and in the game that features currently the highest over on the slate at 52. It's a 7-point spread in the Cowboys' favor. Team total close to 30. Or you're picking between the two cheap options, whether it be Daniel Jones at $6,000, who's been amazing so far this year in Dallas, has allowed a 300-yard passer each and every single week. He had 30 fantasy points last week, and that's without Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. 400 passing yards. I mean, that's going to be hard to replicate, but he has been running the ball well. 27, 39, 95, and 27 yards this year with 2 rushing touchdowns. I think Daniel Jones has a pretty safe floor, and they should be playing catch-up as they're 7-point dogs on the road. Or you can go with the rookie Trey Lance making his first NFL start. I know he only completed 50% of his passes last week, but he still scored around 20 fantasy points and about a half last week, 76-yard touchdown. Also 7 rushing attempts for 41 rushing yards. We should see close to double-digit design rushing attempts for Trey Lance, and I'm a sucker for running quarterbacks, especially below $6,000. So I'd say you take your pick between Daniel Jones or Trey Lance. I'm personally leaning Trey Lance as of right now, but my projections have them within a point, but a slight lean to Trey Lance. So we're just going to plug him in because, hey, I'm ready for Trey Lance season. And that should be a pretty high-scoring game as well. It's not as high as the Giants and Cowboys, but it's like 2 or 3 points off with the 4-point spread, so it shouldn't be anything too drastic there. So we're going to plug in Trey Lance. All right, so we have several ways we can go after that, but I think we're going to get another wide receiver in. And he's going to be the second highest predicted known wide receiver, at least in terms of my projections as of right now. And it's going to be CeeDee Lamb at $6,200. I do want to mention there are so many wide receivers you can use here. I already mentioned them, but Golladay, Jacoby Myers, Amari Cooper. I mean, the list goes on. Like, this is a very good price range for wide receivers. But as of right now, I'm projecting CeeDee Lamb to be the second highest wide receiver behind Devontae Adams on the slate. 2 very poor weeks in a row. They were blowing out Philly, though, so they didn't really have to rely on the passing game too much versus Carolina. Just didn't really get the job done. 5 targets, had 13 yards, 2 catches, 3.3 fantasy points. Probably the worst game we're going to see from CeeDee Lamb the whole season. First 2 weeks of the year were great. 15 targets, 9, 26, 17 fantasy points. We're just going to plug in CeeDee. It's a good matchup versus the Giants. Not really scared of their defense whatsoever. Should be a very high-scoring game. And I'm not sure we're going to have Zeke in this lineup, and I want some exposure to the Cowboys. And I don't have Dak Prescott, so I just feel like putting in CeeDee Lamb just makes sense to soak up some exposure in that Cowboys offense, which I do like quite a bit this weekend. So now we're left with just under $4,000 left per player, which I know does not seem like a lot, but there's punt defenses and punt tight ends that we can definitely use on this slate, so I'm not overly concerned about it. If we have to drop CD to like a Jacoby Myers, that's fine. I mean, there's, like I said, so many ways to go wide receiver this weekend, and running back in that mid to like 6 to 7K range. Like, there's just a litter of good players. So, I mean, it's definitely interchangeable. Just to see what we have to work with, I think we need to put in some of our punt options. So we'll look at defense. I think you're either going the Washington football team defense versus New Orleans. It's actually a pretty tight spread, plus New Orleans offense has obviously not looked that great. Or you can go with the Raiders here over Chicago. Justin Fields, they're playing at home. I'm not really too scared of the Bears offense. $2,900. I think it's going to be very close in terms of ownership. Right now, we'll just plug in the Raiders. That's going to leave us just over $4,200 left per player. So if we plug in a cheap tight end, there's a few tight ends this week that make sense. Jared Cook versus Cleveland is fine. Mike Gesicki, He's going to get the volume. Dalton Schultz has been really good the past 2 weeks. The Giants have not been good versus tight ends so far. 7 targets versus Philly, 8 targets versus Carolina, 17 and 26 points. He's definitely been very solid. I already have CeeDee Lamb though, so I don't want to go too crazy on the Cowboys, especially in a shell cash game build. Evan Ingram's probably the one you're going to want here versus Dallas, just because it makes sense to get more exposure to this game. I don't have any Daniel Jones, so I want to get exposure to his passing attack somehow, because I do think he's a pretty good play. No Darius Slayton, no Sterling Shepard. Yes, Kenny Galladay is going to be there, but he still had 6 targets the past 2 weeks. Caught 5 of them last week. Didn't really do too much with that. Had 7.4 fantasy points, but we know he's going to be involved, and at $3,200, it looks like a very solid play in my opinion. Plug him in as of right now. I do want to mention though, there is a $2,500 pump play if you can't quite afford Evan Ingram. And it's going to be Ricky Seals-Jones with no Logan Thomas. He's on the IR, so Ricky Seals-Jones will step in as the tight end 1 in this offense. He played around 90% of the snaps last week when Logan Thomas went down. Also had 4 targets, caught 2 of them for 19 yards. Nothing super impressive here, but if you're just looking for a pure pump play that's going to be on the field a lot and should be a little bit involved in the passing game, $2,500, it's hard to be. Like, he's not going to be too far from Evan Ingram, and you can save $700. So if we need the savings, we can drop down to Ricky Seals-Jones. That's going to leave us $4,000 left for our last 2 players. If Alexander Madison was good to go, I would love to just be able to plug him in, because if we put him in at the flex here, that's going to leave us $4,100 for our last spot, which we can find a cheap wide receiver. Like, that won't be a problem. We'll say I don't really like any of these wide receivers, so if we went that route, we'd probably have to drop to Ricky Seals-Jones. And that's going to leave us $4,800 left, which I know there's a receiver right at $4,800 that I like quite a bit this week. That'd be Laviska Shenault with no DJ Shark. Tennessee has been terrible versus wide receivers this season, allowing the 2nd most points per game. He had 7 targets last week, nearly 100 yards. So if Dalvin Cook was out, this is actually a pretty good lineup right here. We'd have Trey Lance, Derrick Henry, Fournette, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb, Shenault, Ricky Seals-Jones, Alexander Madison, and the Raiders defense. And there is another player I do want to talk about that is questionable to play, although it sounds like he's trending in the right direction, but it's another 3K pump play, and it's Curtis Samuel, who saw 4 targets, caught 4 of them for 19 yards and a limited amount of snaps in his return last week. He hasn't really been practicing this week, but the coach did say it sounds like he should play, although very questionable. But if he's good to go, $3,000, pretty hard to pass up, to be honest. I know the health is in question, but if he's out in the field, I can only assume they think he's a full go. And even if he's not a full go, he should be somewhat close to it. And that would leave you $7,300 left for your flex spot. You could use a guy like Saquon Barkley. You have Darren Waller there if you want to go double tight end, although I would not recommend that in cash games. You have Deebo Samuel as your pairing option with Trey Lance. He's been amazing this year. Double-digit targets in all but 1 game, but 35, 16, 20, and 38 fantasy points. I would not hate that, especially in tournaments to pair up with Trey Lance. No George Kittle, so targets are going to be quite concentrated on that offense. Saquon Barkley, who was amazing last week, 2 touchdowns, a 54-yard catch, only 30 fantasy points. I wouldn't hate that, because you get exposure to both sides of that game, because we dropped Evan Ingram. So you have Saquon Barkley now, and you have CeeDee Lamb in that high-scoring game. So that's not bad either. Trey Lance, Henry, Fournette, Adams, Lamb, Samuel, Ricky Seals-Jones, Saquon Barkley, Raiders defense. Keep in mind, though, these are no finished products, and a lot of this can change by the time game time starts, because there's just a lot of questionable players that I need to know some more information on to be able to make some actual decisions. And if you found this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, when you sign up there, you get a free money bonus up to $100. It's free money, just use it to your advantage when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think it'll be it. I will stop rambling. I'll see you guys later this evening for the Core Plays video that drops at 9 p.m.